How big is the company now, just to give people perspective?
Sure. So we have 170 people full-time in 4 countries, US, UK, Germany, and Canada. And I don't mind talking financials because even though we're private, I kind of don't care. I'm fine sharing. We just cleared $100 million in revenue for the first time this last year. So we did 105 in revenue, 24 in EBITDA, and we've had.
It's one of the reasons you're one of the best paid.
Well, it's funny.
I don't want to make it an ad for ghSMART, but it's intriguing to me the categories in which you're number one. I think that's because a lot of them seem like almost mutually exclusive.
Right. So if you're the most exclusive and highest paying firm, and keep in mind we don't have buildings and all this SG&A. So we give value to clients. There's less cost in the middle, which means more left over to share with our colleagues. They make more money. We can attract, kind of the best talent, and it's a virtuous cycle. But it's also number one for work-life balance and fewest hours in the office, which, Diane, if we didn't win fewest hours in the office, given the fact we have no offices, that would have been kind of embarrassing.
Right.
So, but and then we also got overall diversity number one, up from 25 or so last year, which is a whole, wonderful other aspect of the culture that, sort of representation, inclusiveness, and that sort of thing.
Well, let me go back to what I don't want to say the whole trajectory of your history, but in terms of the go-to-market now and what it is.
Yes.
I'm a leader sitting here. What makes me want to call you, and why are people calling you now? Is it different than, say, why they called you 5-10 years ago? Are you noticing shifts in that?
I appreciate the question. I think the categories are pretty similar. So if you're a leader, let's say you're a newly selected leader to run something large, you have all sorts of performance anxiety, understandably, right? Here you are, Diane Brady, you're in the seat.
What got me here won't get me there kind of thing, right?
Exactly. All sorts of self-doubt, healthy self-doubt, kind of the Andy Grove, only the paranoid survive.
Right.
Kind of like, okay, I really want to be an impactful leader. I want to be successful. And if you ask leaders what matters, they'll tell you the talent matters a lot. And, talent and digital disruption seem to be number 1 and 2 out of 30 or 40 categories of what's on the minds of CEOs. And so, well, who do you call it? You could call search firms, I guess, if you want to hire in someone specific, but that's more of a narrow solution. We don't do any search work, by the way, because there's some kind of conflicts there.
Right.
You can call the big 3 strategy firms to sort of talk theory about, culture and that kind of thing. Or you call us and we start by doing an in-depth assessment of you and your whole career, and we talk to people about you. We help you in a fact-based, objective way evaluate your existing team faster than you would on your own. Maybe it takes, how long does it take to get to know someone you're working with? A year? A year and a half, 2 years, but if you run them through our in-depth assessment process, you get much more clarity about people's natural strengths and weaker areas. Maybe you're going to change the strategy of the business, Diane, and you're wondering how to, is this team set up to execute on the new strategy or not? That kind of stuff. So really high-end questions about who to hire, sometimes who to fire, not in a layoff sense. I can't remember ever doing let's do mass layoffs. That's
often why you'll hire a firm that,
and that's not us. But
they told me to. I have to reduce,
Right, that's right. So that's not one of the questions that we don't do workforce management stuff. It's mostly senior team optimization around putting the right people in the right spots, real Jim Collins, get the right people on the bus in the right seats type of work. And that's why you would hire us, to have more confidence in the team so you can execute your strategy and make your shareholders happy.
So what would be the typical problems that you see, especially now, because you've been remote since 1995.
Yes.
Most companies have not. They've gone through this 2-3 year period where a lot of people feel rudderless. They don't know their teams that well. What do you find are the common challenges and common fixes?
So I think so we're in a really weird, but I think good time right now in the history of humanity around work. I think work over the decades and centuries has been too coercive, where people don't feel like they have freedom. You have to sort of wedge yourself to fit a job.
Yeah.
You need to physically have your body somewhere where others are watching you do the work. I mean, it's kind of like inhumane, the way work has been set up by necessity for many, many years because of lack of technology, et cetera. Well, we have the technology now for people to have a lot more freedom at work. But a lot of the mid-managers and senior folks are struggling because their instincts are like, oh, how do we train people? How do we have apprenticeship happen? How do we really know if people are doing a good job? So, in anticipating you're going to ask me something about the future of work here, I think three really important things that everyone knows are best practices for management ordinarily, I think are extra important in a more hybrid or virtual space, or even just a global space. And that's number one, really disciplined hiring. So picture if you really do the hard work to assemble a team where everyone, you have a talented, diverse, good-hearted team where they're aligned on values, but everyone's like really good at their job. Well, that gets you about 80% of the way to managing a geographically diverse, distributed workforce. Number two is clear expectations. Lots of companies. I was at a unnamed engineering company a couple weeks ago, and the senior people were saying we'd like to install goal setting here.
Oh, like, really? At that point?
Like from scratch? Like, what do you mean? I said, what do you mean? Like people don't have goals here? And they're like, yeah. It was almost like a dirty secret. They're saying from senior levels on down, there just aren't clarity of goals.
So this is the KPIs, the famous key performance indicators.
KPIs.
The more specific, the better, because sometimes that can feel reductive too. Like, you will increase by 20%, blah, blah, blah.
The best KPIs are outcome oriented, where it's like, hey, look, here are the targets. And now, you, Diane, use your creativity to figure out how to achieve them. So clarity about what the actual targets are, what drives value in an organization. I think that's step two in being able to manage in this new age of geographically distributed work. And the third one, this one's a real doozy, difficult to implement in some companies, but not impossible. It's aligning the rewards to the results. So it takes a lot of the BS, politicking, how do I make money here? As an employee, as a colleague. Bad is if I have to, get in your good graces and
learn to golf.
All that, right. So those are bad ways for resources to be allocated across people. Highly meritocratic, clear links to results, we found makes it a lot easier to manage people who are all over the world, because they know what adds value. And if you're measuring and giving people rewards based on results, then there's a lot less of this politics.
That might be easy if you're a marquee company. You're a marquee company.
Thank you.
A lot of people I talk to talk about, the talent wars and how hard it is to find people. Now, is it that they're not looking broad enough and they only recognize excellence in a form that reminds them of themselves? What are the common issues that, because simply getting people hired seems like a big challenge these days to a lot of leaders.
I think that's right. I saw on a news show just last night, I was thinking of you. The question was, is talent, with the kind of recessionary environment we're still in and layoffs and all that, is talent still the number one topic on the minds of business leaders? And it was, sort of 57% said yes, and then there were some other smaller things on the minds of business leaders. So it's a still a hot topic for companies that struggle with it. I'd say number one, the senior people talk but don't walk the walk. Find out, how do they spend their time? They spend none of their time or very little of their time on talent, whether it's hiring talent or developing talent. You could just sort of look how folks are spending their time. A lot of product oriented, more technology founders and senior executives lean really heavy on the product. They love the product stuff, and the people stuff is this kind of necessary evil. And it's wait a second. If you want to attract the best and brightest, you need to put the time in. So number one, make it a priority, put the time in. Number two is there's a lot of sloppy hiring happening still today all over the world.
Is it because it's like a tsunami of resumes coming in and you've got the machine filtering out, here's your top three?
So you have the, sort of technology-driven tsunami of resumes issue. You also just have folks who haven't been taught some of the good principles of hiring, so they end up using their gut feel too much. Gut feel is highly biased. Gut feel doesn't get you a good answer about people.
Right. You remind me of me at 33. Yeah.
That's right. We had not a client because we refused to do business with these folks, but a couple of decades ago, I remember the client was saying, we like to hire hockey players. Because I was saying, okay.
Well, the Canadian in me says, and why not, Geoff?
Of course. The Canadian in you sees, I kind of get it. However, as it turns out, that's a very small pool of mostly men. And so we chose not to work with this client because we're trying to convince them.
Not because of the hockey player. It must have been other reasons, right?
It was because of what that signified.